Hi, I'm Dr. Verna Gibbs, and we're going to demonstrate here the practice that we think would work best for the labor and delivery sponge accounting system. The essential components are the same. The structural elements are a rack on which these hanging blue back plastic holders are placed, a sign which goes on top of or in front of the box which holds the blue-backed plastic holders. The sign should be laminated so it provides a surface that's easily washable should there be any blood or spatters. And you want to make sure that when you get an IV pole, it has two prongs so that you can attach the rack very easily. Some of the racks may have a prong that comes above like that. And also you can't have a four-prong holder because then you won't be able to easily pull the holders out of the box. The other thing you want to make sure is when the rack is mounted onto the pole that it's easy to adjust the height, because that will be especially important in the labor and delivery area if you have someone who's very short or very tall, especially because the obstetrician may be seated. You want to be able to adjust the height. So those are the structural components that are necessary for this practice. Next, we'll be showing you the way to count in the sponges when they're going to be used. And there are two choices. One is where we'll have another person who's going to be available in the labor and delivery area, usually an OB tech, who can come and help count in the sponges. And the other would be a version that we're showing you to do in case you only have the OB nurse and the obstetrician who would be counting in at the actual time that the delivery takes place. So the first version is where we have the assistant available to set up the table before. They have on sterile gloves and they have the maternity tables already with some instruments and the needles that would be used. In those instances, you sterilely open a package. Of this instance, it's Raytech 4x4s. You break the band, and you want to count in the sponges and make sure that they are separated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the goal here is to see, separate, and say. So we know that we have 10 Raytech to start. And then, in the circumstances of the labor and delivery area, these tables can be covered with a sterile drape. And that would be safe to remain in that way until the delivery actually activated. Now the other option is that there are, again, no sponges on the field, and if the delivery is getting ready to go, you take the sponges and you count them in at the time that you need them. Again, you need two people to perform a safe in count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Thanks so much. 10 sponges, and then no matter which option you use, the first one or the second one, after the sponges have been counted, you write them on the wall-mounted small dry erase board, the number of sponges, and in this instance you may want to also put down the number of needles. In this instance we have 1 needle, so that you are using this as a tool to help you make sure you have all of your instruments and needles and sponges at the end of the birth. Even though it's pretty unusual to have to use more than 10 Raytech during one of these smaller procedures or in a normal vaginal birth, if there is an occasion where you need to add more sponges to the field, I just wanted to make sure that you were clear on the way that we think is the safest way to keep track of the counts. So what we want you to do is to pick either a horizontal or a vertical format. I'm going to demonstrate this as a horizontal format, but this is called a running superscript total. So if you started with 10 And if you added another package, you would add 10 in a superscript and then add the total. And if you added another package, then you would add the total. If you added another package, then you would have the total. The point is that the last number here is the total number of RATEC, in this case, that would be out in the case. You'll notice there's no plus signs, no equal signs, running superscript total. And we know that if we have 40 sponges here, we should have 4 holders full of sponges. So now there's another choice that has to be made in addition to how you're going to count in the sponges, and that is where the sponges are going to go after they've been used. And in this sense, you have another couple of options. The important point here is that everybody has to agree that there's only going to be one way that everybody in the labor and delivery center and all of the birthing rooms, that it's done the same way. So you can't do it one way in one room and another way in another room. Everybody has to do it the same way. But I'm showing you that you have some choices to pursue. So when the sponges are coming off of the field, they can be placed either in a basin, they could be placed in a clear plastic bag, or they could be placed directly on the table. So in this instance, they could go in a clear plastic bag, they could go in a basin, or they could go here on the table, so that they could be seen to be easily placed in the hanging blue-backed plastic holders. Which of these, or perhaps another option you choose, is up to everybody to reach consensus on, but I can tell you in advance that it's not a good idea to let the sponges fall down below the level of the legs so that someone has to dig down in kick buckets to retrieve them. So either of these or something else that you might come up with is acceptable, but again, let me emphasize, you have to decide in the beginning how the practice is going to be standardized and used by everybody the same way. Now I'm going to demonstrate the way that we would recommend that the sponges be placed in these hanging blue-backed plastic holders. You will receive a one-page handout that has the practice for the way, the 10-step practice to put them in the holders. And this is just a visual demonstration. So the sponges in this case are being collected in a basin. And so the proper way is to take the sponges and separate them, and these are RATEC, and make sure that if possible that the blue marker here is facing forward. And the reason that that's important is so that we know that this is a RATEC and not a dressing sponge. You want to put the first sponge in the bottom pocket and then load horizontally. So each one, this can go very quickly. This doesn't take very much time. And the best practice is to do this as the sponges are coming off of the field or as the obstetrician is using them. Surprise this may be to some, but in some hospitals, the obstetricians actually, as they're sitting, they take them off, they actually put them in the holders. So it doesn't matter who puts them there, it's that they get there. In any event, we want to load the holders so that we can see the blue marker facing forward. And the important part of the practice, again, is to separate the sponges and put them in the holder. Now, at this time, if we're at the final count, we would be concerned because we have 2 empty pockets. And we always want the pockets to be at the top, which is why we don't load top down. We always load from the bottom coming up. If you're missing a sponge, you have to begin to look in various places. In the normal vaginal birth, the most common place where the sponge has been lost, in this instance we're missing 2, is in the vagina. So you want to speak up and tell the obstetrician, we're missing 2 RATEC. And the obstetrician should repeat the methodical wound exam and re-examine the vagina. And interestingly enough, frequently those other sponges are found. In this instance, we're still missing 1 RATEC. And you want to look in the drapes, you want to look on the field, but again, these normal vaginal births, oftentimes there are not that many places, but the most important place also to look is in the other pockets to make sure that you've only put one Raytech, because many times these Raytech stick together and you'll end up with two in one pocket. So always go back and look in the pockets as one of those places where these pesky Raytech can often be found. This is a correct count. All the pockets have a sponge. 10 sponges to start. We wrote 10 on our dry erase board. 10 sponges, 1 sponge per pocket, no empty pockets. This is a correct final count. The other really great thing about this practice, in addition to this transparency that you can see that if you have 10 sponges that you've counted in, 10 sponges, 1 sponge per pocket, is also the ease of which you can dispose of the sponges at the end of the procedure. They go into a red biohazard bag. And by removing all of the sponges from one procedure, there aren't any left behind to confound the count on any subsequent births that come into the same room.